Welcome dear student in my course Name Determinants of Quality Life. Today we will discuss on the topic Indian perspective of environmental education for quality of life. Content of this module is Introduction, Philosophical Foundation, Key Environmental Concept in Indian Thoughts, Oral and Textual Traditions, Religious and Cultural Ethos, Environment and Hinduism, Environment and Buddhism, Environment and Sikhism, Environment and Islam, Environment and Christianity, Relevance in Contemporary Context, Environment and Indian Culture. Learning outcomes of this module. At the end of this lesson, the student will be able to understand how Indian philosophy see nature as sacred and interconnected. Learn key Indian concepts like Panch Mahabhutas and interdependence in nature. Know how different religions in India promote care for the environment. Explore how oral and written traditions shape India's environmental values. Understand how ancient Indian wisdom can solve today's environmental problem for quality of life. Introduction. In Indian philosophical thoughts, the environment is not seen as a lifeless physical space, but as a living, dynamic system in which humans are one among many interconnected beings. There is a constant effort to understand and relate to the larger whole of nature. Emphasizing mutual dependence and coexistence, adaptation is considered as guiding principle in relationship between human and then non-human world. Ancient Indian philosophers argued that because humans are intelligent beings, protecting the environment should be one of their fundamental duties. The fragility of the natural world has been a recurring concern in these discourses. This holistic vision of nature is deeply embedded in both oral and textual traditions. The oral tradition focuses more on daily practices and lived experiences, while the textual traditions provides a systematic and philosophical explanation of the universe and its elements. Indian texts describe that like all material beings, humans are made of basic element, that is tattvas, which dissolve back into nature after death. These elements include earth, water, fire, air, sky, time and direction, mind and soul. Indian mythology explain the sequential creation of elements and life forming, from water and sky to aquatic animal, bird, land, creature, air and fire. The environment is considered transcendental, with life present even in non-living materials. There is a deep-rooted belief in the interdependence of all life, making isolated living impossible. Forest, where one could experience nature in its purest form, were idealized. In contrast, urban living was seen as artificial and secondary. Nature, according to the Indian philosophy, can meet everyone's needs if humans live in harmony with it. The environment is not merely a resource, but a friendly and sacred abode that deserves respect and care. Philosophical foundation of Indian environmental thoughts that enhance the quality of life are nature as a living entity. In Indian philosophy, nature, Prakriti, is not lifeless but a living organism comprising both biotic and abiotic component. Everything in the universe is believed to have consciousness, that is Chetana, and they exist in cosmic order that governs the harmony between all entities. The Vedas, Upanishads and Sanhitas stress that all beings, humans, animals, trees, rivers and mountains as part of larger cosmic whole. Panch Mahabhuta and Tattvas. Indian metaphysics outline these Panch Mahabhutas, 5 great elements, that earth, Prithvi, water, Pani, Apas, fire, Agni, air, Vayu and spaces, that is Akasha. As the foundational constituents of life, later texts extend this to 9 tattvas, adding time, that is Kal, direction, that is Disha, mind, that is Manas, and soul, that is the Bhumi, soil, that is the Bhumi. All living beings, including humans, are composed of these elements and returns to them upon death, reflecting the cyclical nature of existence. Key environmental concept in Indian thoughts. First is interdependence. All entities are mutually dependent and cannot survive in isolation. The Indian worldview rejects anthropocentrism and promote ecocentrism, recognizing the intrinsic value of all life forms. Environmental ethics and duties. In ancient Indian thinkers emphasizes duty-based ethic, kartavya dharma. Protecting the environment was not a choice but a moral obligation. The notion of locus magraha, welfare of the world, include maintaining ecological balance, harmony and restraint. Excessive consumptions or exploitation of nature and disruption of natural cycle are discouraged. The Bhagavad Gita advocate simple living and self-discipline. Sada Jivan, Uच्च Vichar, essential for environmental sustainability. Oral and textual traditions. Indian perspectives on the environment are deeply embedded in both oral and textual tradition, which have historically shaped people's understanding of their relationship with nature. Oral traditions are folklore, songs, folk tales, rituals, proverbs reflect practical ecological wisdom. For example, many rural communities plant trees during festivals and follow seasonal agricultural patterns that ensure soil fertility and biodiversity conservation. Textual traditions. In Rig Veda, praises river, rain, wind and earth for deities. Upanishads discuss the unity of all existence and the impermanence of material forms. Manusmriti and Arthashastra contain codes for forest protections, animal welfare and pollution control. Puranas emphasizes ecological balance and the role of divine being in preserving nature. Religious and cultural ethos. The religious and cultural ethos of India play a foundational role in shaping the nation's environmental consciousness. Rooted in ancient philosophical systems, particularly Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and indigenous traditions, Indian culture upholds the belief that nature is sacred, interdependent, and inseparable from the spiritual fabric of life. Nature as a sacred entity. Indian religious worldview do not perceive nature as a passive resources to be determined and exploited. Rather, the environment is seen as an extension of the divine, often revered in symbolic and ritualistic form. Rivers like the Ganga, mountains such as Himalayas, trees like the peepal and banyan, and animals including cows, snakes and elephants are venerated not merely for their utility but for their spiritual essence and cultural values. The doctrine of Dharma and Ahimsa. Central to Hindu and Jain philosophies is the concept of Dharma, righteous duty, which include the duty to preserve and protect nature. The principle of Ahimsa, that is non-violence, particularly emphasized in Jainism and Buddhism, extends beyond human relations to include all living beings. This ethical stances fosters a culture of minimal ecological disruption where non-injury to plants, animal and ecosystem is considered a moral imperative. Ritual, festival and ecology. Traditional human festival and rituals often embody ecological values. Harvest festival, tree planting ceremony and the worship of nature deities serve to reinforce ecological balance and instill a sense of responsibility towards the environments. These practices are deeply embedded in local traditions and community life, creating a cultural mechanism for environmental awareness and sustainability. Cultural narratives and indigenous wisdom. Mythological stories, oral traditions and epics such as the Ramayana and Mahabharata often convey ecological messages. Characters show respect to forests, rivers and wildlife, highlighting the ethical integration of humans with the natural world. Similarly, the lifestyle of tribal communities and indigenous groups across India reflect deep ecological knowledge, sustainable living and reverence for nature as a life-sustaining force. Environment and Hinduism. Hinduism embeds an intrinsic reverence for all forms of life, grounded in the metaphysical principle that the supreme divine holds sovereignty over all beings, including human. Hindu scriptures assert ontological equality among all life forms. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, refuting anthropomorphism anthropocentric domain and advocating for harmonious coexistence with nature. The religion prescribes ethical restraint, ecological harmony, and spiritual symbiosis between humanity and the nature environment. This worldview is exemplified through the doctrine of divine incarnation, Avatara, as articulated by Dr. Karan Singh in the Assisi Declaration. The evolutionary trajectory from aquatic to human forms underscores humanity's interconnectedness with biosphere rather than its supremacy over it. Central to Hindu environment ethics is the principle of ahimsa, non-violence, underpinned by the doctrines of karma and rebirth. The belief in transmigration of the soul fosters reverence for non-human life, opposing institutionalized violence against animals and promoting conservationist attitude. Nature is venerated as the manifest body of the divine, with various flora and fauna associated with deities, therefore reinforcing their symbolic and ecological significance. Hinduism thus offers a moral and theological framework for environmental stewardship, wherein ecological exploitation is construed as both unethical and sacrilegious. Environment and Buddhism. Buddhism is a faith rooted in compassion, love, and understanding, firmly upholding the ideals of non-violence, ahimsa, and simplicity. These core principles emphasize sustainable living and discourage the over-exploitation of natural resources. Ahimsa particularly extend to the sentient being, reflecting deep reverence for animal life and ecological balance. The Buddhist doctrines of karma and cause and effect underscores and consequences of human actions on the environment, warning that disregard for ethical living can result in ecological degradation. Nature, river, forest, mountain is revered within Buddhist teaching as sacred and life-sustaining. Ancient texts like the Sutta Nipata contain clear instruction against polluting water bodies and encouraging mindfulness toward all forms of life, from grasses and trees to bird, insect and aquatic creature. This ecological sensitivity is echoed by the Dalai Lama, who affirmed the interdependence of all existence, highlighting the interconnectedness between human life, animal species and the natural elements such as mountains, rivers and the sky. Jainism presents a deeply spiritual and ethical framework for environmental consciousness, rooted in its core doctrine of ahimsa, non-violence. This principle goes beyond physical non-injury to encompasses mental and emotional strength, advocating for a life that minimizes harm to all forms of life, human, animal, plant and even microscopic being. Jain philosophy emphasizes that any action causing harm, whether deliberate or avoidance, must be refrained from. as it disrupts both individual purity and ecological balance. The Jain path to environmental harmony is guided by the three jewels: Ratnatraya, right belief, Samyak Darshan, right knowledge, Samyak Janana, and right conduct, Samyak Charitra. Together, these tenets form a holistic approach to living in alignment with nature. Right belief fosters awareness to interconnectedness of all existence. Right knowledge encourages understanding of the impact of one's actions, and right conduct ensures responsible and compassionate behavior toward the environment. Moreover, Jainism calls upon individual to the benevolent toward to all living beings, compassionate toward the weak and vulnerable, tolerant of those who are misguided, and joyful in the presence of virtue. These ethical guidelines are not only spiritual values, but also a call for ecological stewardship. In this way, Jainism envisions a world where the spiritual purity and environmental sustainability are deeply intertwined, promoting a lifestyle that is minimalist, mindful, and non-exploitative. Environment and Sikhism. Guru Nanak, the founder of Sikhism, attributed divine qualities to nature and emphasized the importance of respecting God's creations. Sikh teaching assert that humans are an integral part of nature, connected to all other forms of life through inseparable bonds. The Guru Granth Sahib celebrates God's presence in the natural world, highlighted the belief that the universe was created by Almighty. For Sikh, maintaining a balance among nature's elements is essential for the universe's continued existence. Any disturbance in this balance leads to suffering and calamity. The lives of the Sikh Gurus are filled with numerous instances reflecting their deep reverence for nature, including animal, birds, planet, rivers, mountains, and the sky. Sikhism teaches that the well-being of the natural environment and the survival of all life forms are interdependent, moving in harmony with the natural orders. Environment and Islam. In Islam, the Holy Quran and the teaching of Prophet Muhammad provide the foundation for environmental conservation. The Quranic message emphasizes unity, harmony, and balance, and order, urging adherence to nature's law and respecting divine limited. Human beings were created to reflect divine attributes and serve as guardians of creation, with Allah as the owner of the earth and mankind as its trustees. Islam teaches that the environment, including all living creatures, is a trust from Allah, meant to be preserved for all generations. Surah 2:29 highlights that the environment is the divine gift, not solely for the present generation. Actions that harm the environment, such as pollutions, are considered fasad, and those who disrupt the natural balance will be held accountable by Allah, as stated in Quran. the concept of accountability. After that, reinforce the importance of maintaining harmony between humans and nature. The Quran asserts that everything in the heaven and earth belong to Allah. An individual will be judged by their action, with Allah having the power to forgive or punish. Environment and Christianity. Christianity teaches that a harmonious triadic relationship exists between the divine, humanity and nature. That is the triangle. Disrupting this balance can alienate humanity both from God and from natural world. As stated in the Bible, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. This implies that every part of creation is touched by God's divine will, and humans do not have the absolute right to destroy it. Rev. Father Lanfranco Serhi, Minister General of Order of Friars Minor Conventual, emphasized that human effort should focus on the mutual enrichment of humanity and nature. In his message to the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment in Stockholm, 1972, Pope John Paul VI asserted that the environment and its resources belong to all and no one has sovereignty over them. At that example, responsibility toward future generation. This statement reinforces the Christian connection to environmental preservation with a clear emphasis on sustainable development. Christianity therefore stresses the importance of maintaining the environment in its optimal state for the well-being of all. Relevance in contemporary context. The Indian environment perspective offers critical insight for addressing today's ecological crisis, with its emphasis on sustainable living, ethical responsibility, spiritual connectedness, community-based conservation. It provides an alternative paradigm to the exploitative industrial model of development. The integration of ancient wisdom into modern environmental education and policy making can foster more inclusive, ethical and long-term solutions to climate change, biodiversity loss and resource depletion. Environment and Indian culture. Indian culture reflects a profound and time-tested reverences for the natural world, where the environment is not seen as a mere utility but as an extension of the divine, deeply rooted in philosophical, religious and cultural traditions. The Indian perspective promotes a way of life that nurtures ecological balance and sustainability. Indian culture presents a holistic and deeply spiritual approaches to understanding and conserving the environments. It does not view nature as a mere resource for exploitation, but rather as a sacred living entity that is integrally connected with human life. This ecocentric worldview is deeply rooted in Indian philosophy, religion and daily life, forming a foundational aspect of the Indian environmental ethics. Nature as sacred. Indian traditions reveres Nature's earth as Bhumi Devi, river as Lokamata, and element like mountains, trees and animals as divine. Ritual like worshipping the Ganga or people tree reflect deep ecological respect. Environmentalism in ritual. Spiritual rites and festivals in India promote environmental preservation, fostering biodiversity and ecological balance through religious practices. Eco-spiritual values, religious like Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, emphasize ahimsa, karuna and interconnectedness, encouraging compassion, sustainability and harmony with nature. Culture of sustainability and peace. Indian lifestyle values balance between society and nature, advocating renewability and sustainable use of natural resources. Traditional eco practices. Practices like rainwater harvesting, organic farming and movement like Chipko show India's community-driven environmentalism rooted in culture. Nature in text and art. Ancient scriptures, that is Vedas, Upanishad, epics and folk traditions celebrate nature, promoting awareness and gratitude through literature and art. Conclusion of these modules are: Indian environmental thoughts views nature as a sacred, interconnected and alive that promote quality of life. Ancient Indian philosophy promote ecocentrism rather than the anthropocentrism that promote quality of life and Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Religious like Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, Islam and Christianity emphasize compassion, non-violence, ahimsa and responsibility toward nature. Oral and textual tradition uphold values of sustainability, restraint and reverence for the natural world. Cultural practices, rituals and festivals in India promote environmental preservance and biodiversity. Ancient wisdom issues like climate change and ecological balance that promote quality of life of human being and the nature. The Indian perspective encourages integrating spiritual, ethical and sustainable values in environmental education and policies that promote peace and health for quality of life. Reviving these traditions can help build a more peaceful, responsible and eco-conscious societies that promote quality of life of the earth. Thank you.